Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker, and it's late in the season. I mean, it's winter time, but there are still some Chinese green teas that we're looking at. Chinese green teas, often harvested March, April area, sometimes a little later. But the key aspect of that is a tea can be harvested. There can be that time difference between when you're enjoying it and when it was actually harvested, if the tea has been kept well. I was recently talking with someone who pointed out that green teas in China in particular, used to be placed in rooms with lime or something that would draw moisture out of the air, with the concept that green teas, especially Chinese greens, fear moisture more than oxygen or other things that often affect tea flavors. So when you are considering storing your teas, green teas, you may want to consider the humidity or the moisture level in the air as a primary concern for protecting that tea. So we've got the green tea today that we're going to be adding into our gaiwan. Got some of our basic equipment here as usual. Now what I'm doing is I'm covering just enough of I would say about a 2-inch diameter of my 4-ounce gaiwan here. That should be plenty of tea to really draw out some flavor. And I've got my water that's been brought to a boil. It's been cooling for about 2 minutes, a minute and a half, somewhere in there. And I'm going to add just enough water so that my lid will rest on a little bit of water. Will sit above the lid. And then we'll be able to talk a little bit more about this tea. I don't want the leaves to get tucked or caught under the lid, so I'm going to try to push those into the middle, and that looks good. Alright, so now this tea, as we said, this is a Chinese green. It is called Anji Baicha. The company it comes from is Canton Tea Company, which is based in the UK. Now, Anji Bai, the word Bai means white, and sometimes this can get translated as a white tea, but my understanding is that the processing really involves the process of what happens to other green teas. So by the way it's handled, I'm not sure that you could really label it a white tea, but you can find 10 grams on Canton Tea's site. 10 grams available for $5.56. That's currently. We also know that this tea is from the Anji area of Zhejiang province, and it is a 2010 harvest, a Ming Qian harvest, meaning it was pre-Qingming. Qingming is a festival or a calendar date on the traditional Chinese calendar. Often called the farmer's calendar. Maybe you've heard that described that way, but around April 4th, okay, is the regular date for the Qingming festival. Now, let's go ahead and get in to look at this tea. Let me give a peek here. That's looking pretty good, actually. Yeah, let's go ahead and pour that. I think we can pour that and then come back and talk about our dry leaf. So I've got out my pitcher, which is going to allow us to look at the liquor a little bit together. I'm going to grab by the sides here. I'm going to place up here so I can catch any spills. That looks good. There we are. Put the last few drops in there. No. You know what? Because the last few drops can be fairly intense, I am going to just kind of shake out those last few. Usually your stronger liquor is down at the bottom of your vessel, whether it's a teapot or in this case our gaiwan. Now, keeping that at a distance, I do want to give this a smell and talk about our dry leaf. One of the things I'm noticing about this particular dry leaf in comparison to other Anji Baichas, this one has more of a green vegetable component. My first reaction was cucumber, especially the skin of the cucumber. If you've peeled a fresh cucumber, there's some of those smells coming off of there. In comparison with others, that may have had a little bit more of a toasted note to them, a little bit more of a nutty, you know, roasted, unsalted cashew type of or peanut type of component. Cashew, I lean a little bit more towards cashew. This one, on the other hand, has more of the green, less of the toasted element there. Okay, looking at these leaves, you are getting fairly kind of a greenish yellow. Hard to tell. I mean, it's still a pretty vibrant green. I've had fresh, very early spring that are a pale, bright green. This one is a little bit more, getting a little bit, like I said, a little bit more on the greenish yellow end of the spectrum. You are getting needles or links that are an inch or so in length, wrapped, and you're getting sets. Here's a 2-leaf and yeah, like a 2-leaf and a needle or tip there set. Several sets here actually. There's another set. I've also encountered Anji baichas that were processed, pan-fired in the dragon well style, so that they had that kind of grasshopper leaf shape. This one is leaf sets, 2-leaf and bud type of sets for the most part. Most of these are an inch or under in length. Okay, and that takes care of our dry leaf, or at least the basics of the dry leaf. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about our wet leaf. We've got that. We've let that cool for a minute now. Let's go ahead and give it a shot here. More of the nutty component coming out now in the wet leaf. I got a little bit of that cashew that's still coming out, combined with some of the there's some of the lima bean type notes coming out now with the heat and the water there that's interacted with this leaf. But go ahead and look at these leaves for a moment. The leaves have lightened up. They've become a more consistent, kind of a brighter pale green. And as I pull out some of these leaves, and I kind of pull out the ones that are stuck, here's actually a set 3 leaves in a bud. Still nice and tender. Palish yellow green. A little bit more. This one in particular. This one is a little bit more black on the tip there. I'm sorry, the tip, not the tip of the leaf, but the end where the stem or the branch there, where it was broken off and harvested. Let's talk a little bit more about what else we have. Another set. A little bit more. You'll notice that brownishness, that brown area where it was broken off the plant, that's more likely to have a little bit of oxidation present as that was broken off, and there's a little bit of damage that took place there. Okay, so yes, mostly sets, leaves that are intact. Not a lot of anything. Fairly consistent, I should say. Not anything that's just standing out as out of the ordinary in these sets that I'm finding. So we can kind of move on then and talk a little bit more about the liquor. Give this a shot. What you see is a fairly bright yellow, a kind of bright yellow gold there. Compared to it's got a good brightness. It's not as, some very early harvests can be pale in color. This one's a little bit more gold in color, a little bit and more on the yellow side than say a green color, than a pale green. A light aroma is coming off of the liquor. Not that intense. Light aromas. still a very light, faint kind of brothy, spinach broth type of aroma coming off of there. First thing that hit me was the vegetal aspect there. There is that kind of, again, slightly lima bean, slightly green bean components there. But these are garden fresh type vegetables. They've got a bit of sweetness to them. And I've even had some green beans that do have a kind of drying sensation on the mouth. And that's a little bit of what I'm getting here. There is a very light astringency. Something like what you'd find with a wax bean or a yellow bean type of associations there. In the middle of the mouth, in the aftertaste I should say, in the middle of the tongue, the middle of the mouth, there is a sweetness, a light sweetness, again a fresh, garden fresh vegetable type sweetness that's building up right around in there. So that's a positive note. The aftertaste isn't really sustaining itself beyond what many other Anji chas offer. So there's not really anything outside of or extraordinary in its range in that sense. But I would say, looking at this tea overall, I would give this tea, how should I position this? I would probably give this tea a 90. That was the first number that came to mind, simply because it does, one, it's a nice tea. It has the components that you would expect. There's nothing that really lets you down. It's got aromas there. It's got good balance. There's not a lot of astringency, or there's no real bitterness to it. It smooths out, becomes fairly sweet in the aftertaste. The aromas and the taste are present. They're not overly extended. They're not excessively brief. They're just right there in the middle. And so I'd give this tea a 90 because it has notes that are worth keeping. Perhaps if I had gotten this tea a little bit earlier in the season, it may have had a little bit more freshness to it. It might have had a little bit more bump in its aroma and flavors. But overall, the tea itself, its textures, I should mention, a light brothiness, a smoothness there, definitely admirable. So come back and join us on Walker Tea Review, where we're looking at we look at teas throughout the year to really see how they age and how they progress, and that's a reflection on the tea purveyor and the tea company to show how well they've taken care of their teas and how well you can take care of your teas.